unfolding. Joining us on the phone is our chief legal analyst, Jeffrey Toobin. So we don't know whether or not Paul Manafort, as part of a plea agreement, will cooperate with federal investigators. But usually that's the case, isn't it?
Cooperation usually is the case. And frankly, given Manafort's lack of leverage at this point, I think prosecutors would almost certainly insist on it. He has been convicted once. He is looking at likely being convicted again, both in the retrial in Virginia and in the other trial in the District of Columbia. He is looking at a disastrous scenario, plus, of course, the legal fees and stress involved in going to trial again. The prosecutors are there. They're ready to try this case. They'll try it. It's not going to cost them anything extra. So all the leverage is on the prosecutor's side. To give him any sort of deal, they are going to have to get something in return. And the only thing he could really offer at this point is cooperation. And whether he has had a proffer session with them, meaning telling them what he would say if he did cooperate, that's something we don't know, but is a very important question. And it would be a cooperation deal at this point would serve both sides. It would not serve Donald Trump, and it would hurt Paul Manafort's chances of getting a pardon if he cooperates. But we don't know whether he's in the line for a pardon.
And just to give our viewers some perspective, some background, Paul Manafort, he was the campaign chairman for the Trump campaign. He's 69 years old. He was a longtime Washington political operative and lobbyist, and he's now in jail right now because of witness tampering going into the first trial in Northern Virginia. He's still in jail even as we speak right now. He would gain enormously, presumably, if he were to fully cooperate with the special counsel and his team, right?
Well, the federal court system rewards cooperators enormously. There are federal sentencing guidelines that are very strict, that where a defendant has to serve 85% of whatever he's sentenced to. Manafort is looking at least 10 years, I think, given the magnitude of the crime he was convicted of. So you're talking about 8.5 years, let's say, for a man who will be 70 years old by the time he goes to prison. This is an enormous, enormous risk. If he cooperates, that means he gets a letter from the prosecutors, assuming it's truthful cooperation, and that gets him out of the guidelines, and that could reduce his sentence dramatically. That is something that defendants in the federal system are very, very aware of. It's why so many cases end in plea bargains.
Yeah, which raises the question, I don't understand why he hasn't cooperated from the very beginning, knowing the charges, not only the perjury charges, the charges he was convicted of already, 8 out of 18, another 10 could be retried, but also failing to register as a foreign agent in the upcoming trial. Why didn't he cooperate from the beginning?
Wolf, that is a question that I have been puzzled about from the very beginning. That trial in Virginia was a slam dunk. It was a tax evasion case where he didn't pay his taxes. It was a bank fraud case where he lied on his bank applications. There was essentially no defense. Now, he did manage to get a hung jury on certain counts because of a holdout juror, but given the magnitude of the evidence, I don't know why he didn't plead guilty from the start. It may be that he was hoping for a pardon. It may be he's afraid of what his Russian friends would think of him if he pled guilty. It may be that he is simply constitutionally incapable of admitting his wrongdoing. Defendants act in peculiar, sometimes self-defeating ways. But it certainly will not get him the benefit, cooperating now, that it would have if he cooperated from the beginning. But that train has left the station, and he's got to make the best of a bad situation.
I want to bring Evan back in a second, but very quickly, if there is a plea agreement announced as early as tomorrow, does that automatically mean he might be out of jail awaiting the sentencing? Jeffrey?
Oh, you're asking me?
Yeah. If there's a plea agreement, does he get out of jail right away as he awaits formal sentencing?
That would be part of the negotiation. It would not happen automatically. One point of negotiation would be prosecutors perhaps recommending that he could get bail pending sentencing.
Yeah.
Now, ultimately, that would be up to the judge, but judges tend to defer to prosecutors on that. So that is one of many points of negotiation, but one that, as you point out, would certainly be of great interest to Mr. Manafort, whether he gets out or not.
Yeah, he would have a huge incentive to do that. Evan, you're getting some more information. What else are you learning?
Well, Wolf, one of the things that happened early in this case and before the prosecutors even brought charges, we know that Paul Manafort's legal team actually went to the special counsel's office and tried to present information and tried to see if there could be a deal that could be had. And they were rebuffed. Essentially, the special counsel was not interested in offering any kind of a deal. They wanted to charge Paul Manafort. So one of the things that happened early on, I think Jeffrey was saying that the puzzling thing has always been, given the number of charges he was facing and the fact that really it was an uphill climb from the beginning in this case, why didn't he come to some kind of deal early on? And the answer is his first legal team actually did try, and there was no deal to be had. It was clear that the special counsel was intending to charge him. And so that happens in some of these cases where the evidence that the prosecutors believe is so overwhelming that they would rather charge the person and then use that kind of leverage against that person. So in this case, that's what it ended up happening. In this case also, we know that some of the talks began even during the Virginia trial, and they seemed to not go anywhere, partly because Paul Manafort was trying to resist doing any kind of cooperation. And, that happens once in a while, but in this case, clearly, as Jeffrey points out, the leverage that the prosecutors have is so great that it's hard to see that they don't get something from Paul Manafort in return for any agreement that they might be able to reach. Again, we're going to know a lot more about this in the coming hours if we see a court filing from the prosecutors, if we see any kind of paperwork that is filed before tomorrow's hearing, or certainly before Monday's jury selection begins in the trial here in the District of Columbia.
Yeah, I want to go back to Jeffrey for a moment. Jeffrey, as you know, the president and his allies, they've complained that the charges brought against Manafort in the earlier trial in Northern Virginia were totally unrelated to Russia. But the upcoming trial does deal with Manafort's foreign lobbying work on behalf of pro-Russian Ukrainian clients. Do you think that could have been on Manafort's mind?
Well, I think there are a lot of factors at play here, and it is not true that the first case had nothing to do with Russia. It was about his being paid and then not being paid by pro-Russian Ukrainian politicians. I mean, so Manafort's connections to that part of the world were at the heart of the Virginia case. Just one other possibility to consider here is that Paul Manafort can simply just plead guilty and avoid a trial. There's nothing prosecutors can do if he simply pleads guilty to the remaining charges in Virginia and the charges in D.C. He could do that and not cooperate. I'm not sure what benefit he would get. He would get some reduction in his sentencing guidelines by accepting responsibility. It's certainly not as much benefit as he would get if he cooperated, but it's just another possibility to keep in mind.
All right, we're going to stay on top of this story. Obviously, a huge story indeed. We're also watching Hurricane Florence as it moves closer and closer to making landfall in the Carolinas. We'll update you on that right after this.
I can't believe it.
That everything sticks to Stefan Diggs' hands?
No, I can't believe how easy it was to